Well, good morning and welcome to the Situation Room live on location. We are at the Boma Inn Hotel. How you doing? Live on Spice FM, on KTN Home, on KTN News, on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok, on X, everywhere on Radio Garden. Asante sana for joining us. Now, why I'm here is because we are launching the Kenya Skills Development Community of Practice. And this is something we're going to be discussing for the next 1 hour. I'll have a panel to have this conversation with me. I'm going to quickly introduce the panel and I'll ask them to hold a mic as I introduce them. I have Dr. Juma Mohwana. He's a Principal Secretary in the State Department for Industry. Of course, you know, in the Ministry of MITI, Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, or is it Investment, Trade and Industry, PS? Always confusing me, but it's the same ministry. Then we have Dr. Wanjiru Kariuki. She's the Secretary for Skills Development in the State Department for Labor, of course, in the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. John Tue, Director of Projects and Partnerships in the State Department for TVETs, and Caroline Joke is a Chief Technical Advisor at the International Labour Organization. So we're here. It's a big day for launch of this, and I just want to start by understanding what this is. What is the Kenya Skills Development Community of Practice? I think I would just want to start with you, PS, Dr. Mohwana.
Thank you, and I'm happy to be back here because this is really where I've belonged for the longest time in the TVET sector, and the skills in the TVET sector have come a long way, and basically what we are trying to say is from where I come from in industry, we have 13 manufacturing sectors, and we need skills for us to be able to manufacture, to be able to run industries in each of those sectors, whether it's pharmaceutical, agro-processing, construction, cement and clinker, iron ore and steel. And so I am here really for me to say, because when I talk to industrialists, the issue they want to say is we want skills that are relevant to each industry and to each sector. And so now that we are talking about sector skills, then my take on this will be to say, how do we get skills that will drive our pharmaceutical industry? How do we get skills that will drive our crop processing? How do we organize it? How do we have cross ministerial committees and interactions that ensure that the skills that are being demanded in the pharmaceutical sector are properly elaborated within the committees, and the students, eventually where we need the students who turn into our labor force, acquire the skills that we need to drive a pharmaceutical industry that is also changing, that is taking up new technology, that is really evolving. So remember, we are targeting a moving target, and so I am here to make sure that we have skills that change with time, that also modernize with time, that really provide us with efficiency, and we are able to produce profitably, because remember, for us, the bottom line for industry is for you to manufacture profitably, and you need skills to do that, and you need skills that are properly aligned at all levels.
Okay. I want to come to you, Dr. Wanjiru Kariuki. You're the Secretary for Skills Development in the State Department for Labor. Why is it important that we have skills development? And then also, why is it important that we launch this community of practice?
Thank you. I want to first say that this idea was born in Italy by 20 officers from TVET and Labor and Industry. We were sponsored by ILO, and we went to do a course called Academy of Skills Development. And we spent 2 weeks learning about skills development. And on our way back on the plane, we were all exchanging ideas. How can we take this forward? And that's how this community of practice came out. So it was airborne, and now we are bringing it to the ground.
You are grounding it now.
We are grounding it now. So this community of practice has actually been established to link skills supply to skills demand. We have very many stakeholders in this ecosystem, and we need to sit down and talk to each other so that we reduce the skills mismatch that is contributing to high youth unemployment.
Okay, so what is it that you discussed on that flight back home? Clearly, you've spent some time, you've trained, you have gone through this, and then you are wondering, how do we make it fruitful? what are the things that you thought would be quick wins, and what were the things that you thought would be challenges?
When we were discussing the issues on how to establish a community of practice, we were concerned about the skills mismatch. It was on our minds throughout, because from the course that we had taken on Academy of Skills Development, we had gone through all the issues of labor market information, micro-credentials, qualifications, and therefore we said, how can we bring this knowledge into this space where we now speak to each other, create a dialogue so that we can get long-lasting solutions to the skills mismatch, so that we address this youth unemployment. And of course, you can see what is happening. If we can address the youth unemployment, I think we can make great strides towards improving economic growth, as PS Mukwana is also saying.
Okay. Yeah. I'll ask you later what the gap was, but let me move on to John Tuay. John, you're the Director of Projects and Partnerships in the State Department for TVETs. Now, first of all, what's this directorate, and what does it do? When you talk about projects and partnerships for TVETs, what is your directorate in charge of?
Thank you for having me, Eric. I'm very excited to join this community, and we are in conversation, as Dr. Wanjiru has said, that between us we have the demand side and the supply for skills side, and I come from the supply side of the skills. The role of the ministry or State Department is to provide equitable access to quality and relevant skills. And on the other side of the demand side, we are talking about industry who are demanding our skills, and therefore we need to have a conversation to ensure that the skills that we develop within the supply side are relevant to industry. And that's why we have a number of programs and projects within the State Department that ensures that we skill the youth, we skill everyone that needs to drive industry, and ensure that we have employable skills to curb the challenge of unemployment.
All right. Caroline Njoke, Chief Technical Advisor at the International Labour Organization. Yeah, so you sponsored this trip, and the learning and the ideation, and now we are seeing the fruit of it. But from the ILO perspective, what is it, what's the importance of development of skill that is relevant to the labor market at any given time? What does it do in terms of, even in terms of the sustainable development goals that we have in place?
Thank you so much, and I'm rather excited at the launch of the Kenya Skills Development Community of Practice. I would say, it is one of those investments that you see bearing fruit almost immediately. So really congratulating all the senior officers from government that came up to just have this idea go along. The ILO is the UN Agency for the World of Work, and we are a tripartite organization, and I'll tell you why it's important to say that right from the outset. So we bring together governments, workers, and employers. And the employers are where the PS was talking about. We have industry in need of skills. And then on the other side, we do have the workers that then would power those enterprises. And for the ILO, we do have a strategy for skills and lifelong learning that runs until 2030 with just 3 key objectives. One is to improve employability of workers. And then I'm sure in this conversation we will go into why are workers employable or not. 2 is to move young people into productive and decent work, because people are working. Question is, are they in productive work, or are they in work that that can be considered decent? Is it safe? Does it pay well? Does it give them opportunities to thrive? And lastly is to improve productivity of enterprises. But enterprises cannot be productive if their workforce is not well trained. And so that is why it's rather critical for us as the ILO, the constitution that I just mentioned, to come together and look at how is it that these three objectives that I've mentioned will come together. And this community of practice is right at the heart of it, Eric.
Thank you, Caroline. You know, so far, none of us has actually talked about what this community of practice is. So I want to go back now and ask, and I'll come to you, Dr. Wanjiru. So what is a community of practice? What does it mean? Because we're talking about skills development, community of practice. Please break it down to somebody who was not on that plane, who was not in their office.
Yes, actually the community of practice is basically a community of people who have similar ideas and similar interests coming together with an agenda where they want to exchange ideas in a space where you want to build each other. You come up with an agenda, dialogue on it, exchange ideas, build each other, exchange best practices, share knowledge. So that's what this practice is about. That is what this community is about.
Are we saying that before this, people have just been operating in silos? That TVET has been operating in silo, the State Department for Labor has been speaking its own language, that industry has just been speaking its own language? Have we been saying different things in Luo, in Kikuyu, and Kimeru?
Actually, you have put it, I couldn't put it in a better way. We haven't been speaking to each other very well. For a long time, skills supply was talking to themselves, skills demand were talking to themselves. But now, this community of practice provides a platform to bring the skills supply stakeholders and stakeholders from demand side, sit at the table, dialogue on how we can deal with this problem of the skills mismatch.
Okay, so who manages the community of practice? Is it going to have like a council of elders, a chief, a room where people go into? How do we come together then and make sure that you're all speaking one language?
Actually, what we have done is we have had meetings with the community members. We came up with a constitution, and we agreed that among ourselves, we shall use the code of governance that we developed, elect our officials, and move on.
P.S. Dr. Mukwana, you have been in the skills development sector. Now you're there in where the demand is, and you are talking to industry, and you've heard what the industry has been saying. Is the gap so wide? Is the industry demanding something that we are not producing at all?
Yes, two things there. One, I think, is that if you look at the way we have been producing our skills, as Dr. Wanjiru has said, there has been a mismatch between what we are producing and what the market is looking for. So you end up with a situation where graduates that have been trained in a certain skill do not fit into the job. And so when they come into the job, then they need retraining. And just because of the way our training is designed. But as I have said also, is that on the demand side, technology is changing and expectations are changing. So remember, we are targeting a moving again target, meaning that if we really have to keep pace with producing graduates that are able to then work, that we have to have a very clear alignment between what demand and supply. The second issue that I wanted to talk about coming into industry is industry is not a bottomless pit. So what happens then? That part of the skills that we need is not just to work for industry, but also to create industry, because then so we are looking for people who have skills to be able to produce in an industrial environment, but also to be able to conceive and come up, especially the idea of cottage industries. And so if you look at them, if I just step back a little bit, look at our industry, and I think I've described this when I visited you, is that Kenya and Africa, when you look at our industrial space, we have issues that we need to address. Industrialization as a concept then was an idea that happened in the UK in around 1740, the first industrial revolution. Since then, of course, many continents, US, Asia, China, have experienced the industrialization. When you come into Africa here, as Latif, as we are talking about the fourth industrial revolution globally, Africa is still struggling to figure out whether we even have the first industrial revolution. And part of this is the attitude. And so for us, we are also looking beyond just skills to function in a factory. We are looking for graduates that have an attitude, that have a yearning to even participate in industrialization, because the question that we are asking is who is going to industrialize Africa? As we talk about skills, we assume that we have enough industries where people can go to work. But from where I sit, what we need more urgently is people who have skills, not just to work in industry, but also to create industries. And so because then that answers the question of who is going to industrialize Kenya. Do we assume that the people that we have in that space are enough? Do we assume that we have enough industries? No. Do we, because as I've said in another setup, if you look at the continent of Africa, 1.4 billion people, this is 17% of the world. But our share of manufactured products in the global market is less than 3%. So we are punching below our weight. So the question then is, do we create graduates that want to work in an industry that is already constrained, that is already too small for all of us? Because I think that the right potential is there. For Africa needs to be making 17% of the global manufactured goods. And for us to do that, so we are just looking for graduates at all levels, both in TVET and universities and engineering, that can really blow up this sector of manufacturing, because we are, if you look at 3%, 17%, we are actually working at below 10% of our capacity. The last issue I want to say on that issue, if you look at manufacturing, for example, in China, Eric, if you put all the 55 countries in Africa, our manufacturing is only 10% of what is happening in China. That tells you that we are punching below our weight. So we need people with entrepreneurship skills. We need people that are able not just to work, but to really invest in small cottage industry so that we can boost our manufacturing.
I like what you've said, developing skills that will create industry. Because oftentimes I've actually had this question being asked, and just people just throwing it out there for argument's sake, but it's a good argument and good debate, that when we say that skill is demand driven and demand then is coming from industry, does industry know what it wants? Times are changing, and every time times are changing. Those that are in the manufacturing sector, do they know the kind of skill that they want really?
Yes, and that's why you find, if you go on the industry floor, you find a lot of training going on. So the industry is very clear. As I've said, this is a changing area, the automation, technology, IoT. So there's a lot of innovation that is required. And now there is a very clear, for example, linkage between manufacturing and ICT because of automation, lean IoT. And so we have a very, very robust and changing environment. And remember, for industry, we are looking at a number of issues. Not just that the technology is changing, because when people think about industry, they think about production. But we have a lot of maintenance, we have a lot of repairs, we are looking at productivity, we are looking at how do you convert raw materials into products in the most efficient way, so that you are able to, again, keep your maintenance low, safety issues, the quality of the products that you are producing. So we need graduates that are able to answer to all those issues. And at the end of the day, this industry will only be sustainable if it is able to make a profit, but also make a product that is appreciated by whoever is buying. So when we are looking at skills, we are looking at skills that will give us a quality product that will be able to run our factories, that will be able to maintain, to repair in the shortest time possible. Remember, the turnaround is very quick. If your machine is down, you don't want to, again, have a system that takes 2 weeks for you to get the machine back. So there's efficiency, there's quality, and then of course there's a link between ICT and then mechanical systems, so that you have again that interaction and the whole system of automation. Now we have robotics, AI is coming in, and believe you me, if you go into our factories today, we are already there. People are already using artificial intelligence.
They know what they want.
They know what they want. But I think sometimes we move so far away from the skill supply, that then the skills that we are getting, it's like you are producing somebody who comes in and is way behind what industry is looking for. So, and that's why I'm here to just say, what is it that we need? And as I've said, not every sector of industry will require the same skills. So we'll really be having a conversation to say, for pharmaceutical industry, what do you need?
Yeah.
Because there are very specific issues that will affect pharmaceutical. If you're talking about agro processing, you'll have very, very specific issues that come in, cold chain and all that. And again, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. I want to come to you, Caroline, but before you do that, we are running a show, so there are people who may have joined this conversation halfway on KTN News, on KTN Home, on Spice FM, on all the other platforms. This is Eric Latif, live at the Boma Inn Hotel, where the TVET Authority is launching the Skills Development Community of Practice. We are discussing that community of practice, who needs to sit at a table to discuss what the industry needs, what the skills developers are developing. These are the institutions of higher learning, be they TVETs or universities. What exactly is needed? With me in the panel is Dr. Juma Muhwana. He's a Principal Secretary in the State Department for Industry in the Ministry of MITI. Dr. Wanjiro Kariuki is the Secretary for Skills Development in the State Department for Labor. John Tue, the Director of Projects and Partnerships in the State Department for TVETs. And Caroline Joke, who's a Chief Technical Advisor in Supply in the International Labour Organization. So, Caroline, to you again. Industry globally, it keeps getting into that moment where, like the PS has told us, because of what they're doing, necessity becomes the mother of invention. They keep thinking, this is what we need, this is what we want. They're constantly training on the shop floor. But how then does that link back into what is being produced? Just tell us that, and then Juma will tell us the role of apprenticeship then in this, for TVETs then to take apprentices to the industry.
That's a very good question. Industry is driven by their bottom line. And so whatever it is that they do, they're thinking about how is it that we improve our productivity to the highest level? How is it that we can stay competitive? And it is not the role of industry to train. Yeah, that's not their core business. The core business is with training institutions. However, because of the reasons that the peers has spoken to, industry often finds itself to having to invest in improving the talent that they are getting. And because industry has to evolve faster, adopt newer technologies, look at how they can be more sustainable. So we are talking about, for instance, being greener. There is the reality of digitization. And so globally, industry is also looking at how do we bridge the gap between the talent that we are getting and the talent that the training institutions are graduating. And one of the ways that has been found globally to be sustainable, effective, is through establishing platforms where industry and training institutions or the training ecosystem comes together. We call it the sector skills approach. So where we do not have to wait 2 or 3 years for intelligence on the skills in demand, but because we sit together through these industry-led platform, we are continually providing feedback to training institutions. So these are the new technologies that we are adopting. These are the new occupational standards that we should be looking at. And therefore, this is how your curriculums should also be looking at. But that's not enough. there is a role of industry, and industry globally is doing this, where they integrate the training component within themselves, and you've already gone ahead of me, and that is true. For instance, work-based learning, schemes for work-based learning, which I call finishing off. So excellent training, probably you are at 40%. It's never 60%, Eric. That is the reality of training.
Sad, isn't it?
No, it's the finishing is better at industry because there is nuance, there is context, and there is real training on how you do the work with minimal room for mistake, because we are talking about producing juice, a bottle of juice, and getting it to market. So you're not in the lab trying to do things. It's that this is how we produce to remain profitable so that we can compete and keep you employed, because there is also that loop.
So then it's important to then link the trainees to industry, even as they are still learning. So what's the importance then? What's the linkage of apprenticeship, and especially from TVET side, on making sure that there's proper apprenticeship and linking with the right industry constantly throughout the training?
Thank you, Latif. In training, within the training value chain, as our graduates exit to the world of work, we are implementing the incubation centers within the TVET institutions to ensure that we prepare the youth or the graduates from TVET to enter the world of work, either to develop their own industries, as you alluded to, or to participate in gainful employment. Now, within these incubation centers, there is coaching and mentorship to package or prepare, ensure that they incubate their talents or innovations, which will, in essence, grow into industries for those people who are entrepreneurial. And within that incubation center also, we have entrepreneurial skills and soft skills that prepare this person to create the jobs.
But see, government is known to be this very slow, heavy bureaucracy that takes a long time to move. So as industry is moving at a speed of 150 kph, government is moving at 15 kph. And so the demand there is very high, and the industry is saying, we want this, we want the other, we'd like to move at this pace. But then it comes to government, we have to think, do we change the curriculum? Do we change the way we are sending our students out for apprenticeship and internship? Do we change how we train our trainers so they can come in? You'll always be too slow. What's this community of practice going to do to make sure that the government is actually catching up? And government here, I mean the TVET, from the TVET side, that the developers of skill are moving at least as close to the speed of industry. Start with you, Chue, and then come Dr. Wanjiru.
Thank you. We appreciate that speed, and that's why we have this conversation. That we have the sector skills committees that we are developing within the CDAC, or Curriculum Development Assessment and Certification Council, that will always be able to know the future skills and be able to revise the curricula continuously to match the demands of industry. Secondly, we are also training with the projects or project-based training to ensure that we are with the industry, and we are training with industry for industry. Similarly, we are working with the various development partners to come up with the dual training approach, where we are training at 50% at the institution and 50% with industry. And industry will also be able to update our training equipment to match what is industry.
Still, that's slow. Still, that's slow. What's best practice? I mean, you've studied this elsewhere, Dr. Wanjiru. What is best practice in terms of making sure that skills development is up to date all the time? That we don't have to wait through a 10-year cycle to revise the curriculum, that we don't have to wait until we get new graduates who will come in as new teachers, because the old teachers still are still teaching the old things, and the industry is in Internet of Things. And you go to a TVET and you're finding all the lecturers, they don't know what IoT is all about. They think it's in other news.
Thank you. Actually, I want to say that the government is not as slow as it appears.
Oh, really? It's an illusion. It's doing 20. It's better.
Because actually we've done a lot. In the last 2 years, for instance, last year we developed the National Skills Development Policy. It was approved by Cabinet on 13th December 2023. The Skills Development Policy actually goes into the nitty-gritty of the skills mismatch, and it looks at everything that is causing this disconnect between supply and demand, and then it comes up with policy actions that should be undertaken. So we have made a great stride in that direction, and I think in Africa we might be the second country that has a national skills development policy. The same year we also developed the National Career Guidance Policy, and again in the world we might be the third or the fourth country that has developed a national career guidance policy. Career guidance is very important in linking supply to demand, because it prepares the supply side for the careers that are there in industry. This year, we developed another policy that was approved called National Policy on Linking Industry to Education, Training and Research. This one looks at basically how we can share knowledge between supply and demand. How can we share technology? How can we share infrastructure? How can we work with industry, with supply and demand side on issues to do with innovation, intellectual property? All that is in that policy. So that policy is about to be launched, but it's already approved by Cabinet. And we have also now developed the National Work-Based Learning Policy, which is about to go to Cabinet. The Work-Based Learning Policy, as Caroline from ILO has said, is now looking at work-based learning in a holistic manner, looking at internship, apprenticeship, pupillage, cadetship, all work-based learning in an integrated manner. How can we make it accessible, equitable, quality, relevant, and how can we link it to the decent work agenda? So we have done a lot in terms of policy, and the good thing with policy is that it prepares us to use resources in an optimal manner, because now we have a roadmap that can help us to work together between supply and demand side.
Dr. Wanjiru, what do they do in the other countries? And I know PS will come in at some point, but when you were studying and you were going through this training in Italy, what is best practice? What do they do in other countries? How do they make sure that industry is actually receiving the requisite skilled labor coming in from the training development?
There are many best practices. One of the most important is labor market information. Having a repository of labor market information, which Kenya has. In the Ministry of Labor, we have the Kenya Labor Market Information System. And this one should be collecting labor market information in real time, so that supply side can be able to align the training as per what the industry wants. The other one, of course, is national occupational standards, ensuring that industry gives us the standards that they require of education and training. And that one we have made headway, because we have established 11 national sector skills committees made up of industry. And we are now ensuring that they develop occupational standards that will help curriculum developers develop curriculum that is aligned with what the industry wants in terms of standards and priorities. So we have put in the mechanism or the backbone to help us start moving in the right direction.
Okay, this information system, you say it's working real time?
Well, let us say the system is there, but we are improving it.
So what currently is it doing?
Currently we
have a labor information system. That I presuppose it's getting information from the labor market.
Yeah.
The labor market knows to say, these are the needs, this is what we are doing. And then you're able to see this at the skills development department in labor ministry. And then what do you do with it?
Currently what happens is that the Ministry of Labor works with Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. They undertake research on labor market and they put it on the Kenya Labor Market Information System. Every quarter there's a labor market report that comes out that tells us how the labor market is behaving. Now the problem has been is education and training using this information. So that is why you find this community is important, because then education and training gets to know what the other side is doing in terms of producing information, in terms of developing standards, so that we speak to each other, so that they are aware. So that disconnect had been there, but an intervention like this is very important in bringing these two parties together, so that one, we share that information, two, we share the standards, three, we also help each other with training, because industry, as you said, are moving very fast, and therefore we need industry also to come into the supply side space to help us also with skills development.
PS, respond to these ones, because I know you wanted to respond to a couple of things before I ask you the next question.
Yes, I think we need to recognize that although our TVET sector is very old, real change in this sector has come in only in the last 10 years. Before that, you know that we didn't even have a legal framework for the TVET sector policies to support institutions. So if you look at until 2013, after the promulgation of the new constitution, is when we really focused. In fact, if you look at the government, the way it was organized, that's the first time you had even the State Department for TVET. And then in 2013, we created TVETA. Then we've created which was then to provide standards to quality regulation, accreditation, quality assurance. Then we've also created, you remember we even did know a lot of our assessment was being done at NEC, which was basically very theoretical, until then we brought in TVET CDAC to do curriculum development. We didn't even have a curriculum developer for this sector until again 2013, when you have TVET CDAC to do curriculum development and also to align assessment to industry needs. And then of course the Kenya National Qualifications Authority, again looking at the issue of what is a qualification and how do you then define it, how do you assure that it meets industry needs. And so if you look at as Caroline said, our training for after independence, I think because of our colonial past, those who came ahead of us admired the colonial worker, the man in the white tie and what we call the white collar job. If you look at independence, our trajectory of training, I think then the Africans that were there at that time admired the life of the colonialist. So we tended to move more of training clerks, people in the office, and we did that for a very, very long time. Until we realized that we were producing very many people who want to work in offices that did not exist. And so for me, the turning moment is 2013. We recognize that we have an issue with our skills, with our training, with our TVET system. I could see the way it was a fairly neglected place, the number. So I want to look at three things if you're looking at a training system. The first thing is access on the other side means supply for industry. So we didn't have many TVET institutions. And so if you look at the last 10 years, the number of national polytechnics that we have created, one TVET institution for each constituency, that means success. It means we have increased the number of trainees that we are getting. And so for us in industry, it means that we can access more people. So that is an issue that we have addressed, that with the more training institutions, the more students you enroll into the system, the higher the chance that then you will have good people that are able to work within industry. The other issue is quality. And quality is an element of what you are describing. Quality means there's a good curriculum, there's good library, there's a good ICT training center, and even the equipment that you're using to train. And the trainer, you can see that we are still employing new trainers, because previously then we had also very old trainers that were fairly theoretical. The issue of examinations, some of the TVET before this reality came in, there was a lot of theoretical training and also assessment. And then the last issue, which we are really addressing in this issue, is relevance. Is what you are training relevant to the environment? And that is where KNQA comes in, and other players that then you have to, the Sector Skills Council are able to access. And when I look at this space, within that 10 years, we've created institutions, we've created new curricula, we've created, we've even tried to change. If you look at it globally, part of how do other people address this? If you go to Germany, for example, they have what they call the dual TVET training, where half of the training is in the college and half of the training is in the industry. In fact, I learned when we visited Germany that there's no student who gets admitted into a TVET program if they have not been recommended by an industry. So first of all, you go to the industry, and then the industry says, I am going to train this person. And a lot of that training is actually sponsored by the industry. So the student takes time both in the college, and also half of it is in the industry. And even assessment, part of the assessment, you take your assessment at college, but then the industry will also assess you. And we have also seen this working very well in Canada. And I think based on those experiences, that is why we changed our training system here in Kenya to now come to what we are calling competence-based education and training. So you can see that now we've made it more practical. We are also attempting to do more of the same training at college and training at industry. But as Carol said, it is impossible to produce a graduate that is 100% aligned to industry needs. But with these efforts, and of course, including the issue of RPL, the recognition of prior learning, where we have said part of this training is that we have people already in work that may not have papers. Yep. So we can go the reverse way, because you're already doing it, you're using this technology, as you know already. They are skilled already. If you look at our mechanics, the people who are repairing our cars, and that is the dichotomy that I found when I came into the TVET sector, and why RPL was very important. And we found that the people who are doing the job in TVET, masons, mechanics, did not have the papers. And those who had the papers could not do the job. And so and that quite describes our environment. And so if we look at what we are doing now in that sector, is that we are also recognizing that these who are already doing the job that may not have the papers, we can actually step backwards and start to certify them, to assess them, so that we give them confidence, so that what they're doing is informal, so that we formalize their credentials. And I think that, so there's been a lot of, if I look at the last 10 years, from where I sit, there is a lot of effort. As you say, we are moving at 150 kilometers. I think the government is coming up, they're almost at 50 kilometers per hour.
Since we started talking. And I think the more we talk, let me sample some comments that I hear on our live stream. Someone says, the Ministry of Industry has a lot of potential in the African continent, not just in Kenya. We just need more implementation, not additional great ideas that are never seen through to the end. So that's the first challenge, number one, PS. How do we make sure that the efforts that will come out of this community of practice will actually be of benefit, not talk, not gathering of information, of data, not using that then to develop a policy, and then the policy does not come to the ground? How do we guarantee that what's happening in the boardrooms that is really, really good is actually translating to the ground?
Yes, as I've said, our objective is double. We want the factories, the manufacturers that are operating, to operate efficiently, and to do that they need good skills that are aligned to their needs. But as we have said, in Africa here, we have a job that we have neglected, which is increasing manufacturing. So you see, when you talk about industry, sometimes we think that we have enough industry, for example, to serve our people and to serve the region. I have demonstrated here that what we are doing is just a drop in the ocean. And if you look at, if I bring it more closer to Kenya here, we are doing a number of issues to boost our manufacturing. For example, our manufacturing was always in a few, 80% of our manufacturing is in 4 towns. So Nairobi, Mombasa, Eldoret, and if you add Machakos, Kiambu, that region. One of the areas that we have now said is that we want each county, each of the 47 counties, to focus on manufacturing. And that's why we've come up with the county aggregation and industrial parks, so that each county, out for all the 47, they have an industrial area. This is, start to think about it. And part of what we're also doing is we have looked at the barriers to entry into manufacturing. Part of it is the high cost of land. For example, if you find a piece of land, 1 acre of land in Kiambu is 200 million, there's no way you are going to grow manufacturing in that space. So we are doing in industry what is equivalent to affordable housing. We are doing affordable industrial spaces. So today, what we are calling the county aggregation and industrial spaces, we are building industrial spaces on public land, meaning that you can access industrial space at a lower cost. We are even going a step further. We are not just building the infrastructure, and next week, those who read my GOV, we are even advertising. We are going to build industrial spaces and put machinery in it based on the value chains that we have identified for each county. So that the only role that a Kenyan needs to manufacture is bring your raw materials. So we build a center in Eldoret, we put if it's a maize mill, we put it there. And you, as an aspiring manufacturer, all you need is buy your raw material. Come there, brand your product, call it whatever you want to call it. We mill it for you, we pack it, you leave, somebody else can come and use that machinery. And that way, hopefully we can create many more industrialists. And next week will be very, very specific, because a lot of the construction is 80-70%.
Yeah.
We are now inviting the private sector to come in, those who want to even put their own machinery. So you can even buy your machinery. You don't need to be a manufacturer. You put it there for other people to use and they pay for it. So we are looking at common manufacturing. We are trying to address the issues that are holding us back from going into manufacturing. Because as I said here, the people who have industrialized, Eric, Europe has been industrialized by the Europeans. China has been industrialized by Chinese. India has been industrialized by the Indians. When you come here in Africa, the question is, who is going to industrialize this continent? And my brothers and sisters sitting in this room, when you talk about industry, when one of us has some little money to invest, industry is not a place we think about. And we think that somebody else will come from another continent to come and industrialize this country for us. We want to demystify this area. When we are talking about the cost of living, I know I'm taking a bit of time. Eric, we can't talk about bringing the cost of living down if we are consuming what we are not producing. So we are deluding ourselves.
That's a challenge.
And that is why we are putting it.
Yes. They don't feel like government is supporting industry and industrialization.
No, we are doing a lot. As I've said, we have even now, we are not just going to the industrial park. I've described the industrial park. Today, if you really want to move into industry, all you need is your raw material, and you look for your market.
Move into a KIPES.
If you look at what we have done over the last 1 year, Kenya has signed the Kenya EU Economic Partnership Agreement. What does it mean? It means today that you can manufacture 15,000 products to sell in 27 European Union countries, duty-free, quota-free. So we are opening up market.
Yeah.
But then when you look at ourselves, the citizens, we are not ready for this. You look at, we are doing the US, we are doing the East African market. Now, if you make a product in Kenya, you can sell in 8 countries across the East African region, and it's not an export. So you can sell to Rwanda, you can sell to Uganda. But so we are opening up this, but we also realize that maybe as a population, manufacturing has not clicked in our blood. So we are really trying to entice our people to say,
to move into that.
Yes, this is the only way we can make the discussion about cost of living. If we are importing 80% of what you need, and only producing 20%. How do we even discuss cost
We're
of
not
living?
moving fast. So, PS, I've got to cut you short there.
So you can see. So
we are
really,
running out of time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Asante,
But you get the
PS.
point.
Point is home, point is made. I think I've just got to have some closing remark here, and I will come to you, Caroline, from the International Labour Organization perspective, the importance of this community of practice and the kind of support that then it needs from industry, from stakeholders, from all stakeholders.
Absolutely. SDG 8 speaks about inclusive economic growth for decent work. And work only arises when enterprises are thriving. And enterprises will only thrive when, amongst other things, but the skills are not the only things for enterprises. There are so many other realities, business environment, etc. But skills are very integral. And so the essence of this community of practice, and why we as the ILO are very excited to partner with the government of Kenya, is that it brings together the ecosystem, the skills ecosystem, and whether it's industry, training institutions, we have workers there, we have business support institutions, to have a very honest and continuous conversation around how to improve things. And everyone within the COP then has their takeaways. If it's the training institutions, they know what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And I believe even other elements, for instance, access to finance for the skilling. Those are elements that would be discussed, integrated into policy. And I know at times we think policy is a little slow, but we cannot work in the absence of policy. And also the actual implementation right now, what do we need to do, is taken away from that. If you allow me, Erica, just one
In
last...
30 seconds.
Sure. Is skills demystifying industry? And I think, PS, this is something that we need to do. What comes into our minds when we think about industry? Is it steel? Is it the very large industries that then makes me, with my graduate, skill from Kabete, not imagine that I can get into that space? Because people with skills can immediately get into the industrialization path. So demystifying that is also going to be something that we have to do. Thank you.
I agree, and I think it's a very important thing. Just like you said, skilling so that you can create industry. It doesn't mean that you skill so that you have to go and work in industry. It can be skills so that you can then go and start. And cottage industries and the aggregation industrial parks come in very handy on this. So I've got to end it here. It's 8:02. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's the launch of the Skills Development Community of Practice at the Boma Inn Hotel. We've been live here. My panelists have been Caroline Joke. She's the Chief Technical Advisor at ILO. John Tue, Director of Projects and Partnerships at the State Department for TVETs. Dr. Wanjiro Kariuki, the Secretary of Skills Development in the State Department for Labor. And Dr. Juma Muhwana, the Principal Secretary in the State Department of Industry. My name is Eric Latif. Keep it here for more conversations.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.